Is that Nantia is here?
I can see Nantia. Where's Nantia?
Yes. Can you see her?
No, I can't. Where's she?
She's on my screen. She's in a yellow shirt.
Ah, well. Oh, hi, Nantia. Hello, Nantia. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, well.
Listening to you whining about the bill and the cold.
I never stop moaning. I've become one of those moany people, and I keep looking at the tree outside my window, and I'm thinking, well, spring is started because there's flowers on my tree. Thank God. This is why I left England. Yeah, I left England because of the cold.
But England is getting warmer, right?
I know, I don't know, but I'm not allowed to go anywhere. We're not allowed out of the country.
No.
It's, I'm beyond annoyed. No,
hello,
Vicars,
this is Dr. Mohd Kamlosan from Bangladesh. I'm Kenny Noman's friend.
You're whose friend?
Yes, I'm Kenny's friend. Yes.
Oh, jolly good. Yeah. I'm looking at Narong Dej.
Narong Dej.
I'm looking at Narong Dej, and I'm kind of thinking already that Narong, I would like you to read for me much later. I would like you to read.
Let me introduce you first.
Oh, sorry. The character of Mother. Anyway,
okay.
I'll shut up now. Let Kenny do the introduction, and then I'll talk about how this is going to work.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, Mark. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to LINC webinar. LINC stands for Language and Intercultural Communication. This is a master's program at the Research Institute for Languages and Cultures of Asia, Mahidol University. And this is our second time organizing our free webinar to our audience. And this webinar couldn't be possible without our networking collaborations with the Bachelor of Arts in Language and Intercultural Communication from the International College of Sustainable Studies atศรีนครินทรวิโรจน์ University. And the second one is Bachelor of Arts in Language and Communication from Sondusit University, and Bachelor of English from Prince of Songkhla University Hat Yai campus. So today I'm honored to have Associate Professor Dr. Mark Vicars with us on the topic of the post-qualitative turn in social science inquiry. Before that, let me read his brief biodata a little bit. Following 24 years of working in education in several countries, with 15 of those in higher education, Mark has extensive international multi-sector experience of teaching and learning, embodied, blended, and online, as well as a solid track record of team and curriculum leadership. He's highly experienced in developing international strategy on teaching and learning in Australia, Asia, and the UK, generating international opportunities for collaborative partnerships focused on the teaching research nexus. He has developed research affiliations and education partnerships internationally to deliver educational workplace training and research. Mark's philosophy of praxis is underpinned by principles of social justice, and he has proven success in leadership in tertiary educative context, and has substantial experience in providing quality and innovation in learning. As a scholar, researcher, and teacher, Mark is dedicated, innovative, and passionate about creative, research-oriented professional journeys and community engagement. He's intrinsically motivated and enjoys working collaboratively in dynamic, creative environments. Mark's teaching is highly evaluated based on a commitment to working with undergraduate and postgraduate students from diverse countries, cultures, socioeconomic, and educational backgrounds. Throughout his career, Mark has produced an integrated body of work that has fundamentally been focused upon engaging with teacher learners through a transformative student experience. Mark has a Ph.D. from University of Sheffield, regarding on the topic of this dissenting fictions and ethnographic investigation of literacy practices of gay men. And he has actually quite a number of degrees. Okay, maybe Mark, may I read? Just gonna continue reading. Okay, he has a Bachelor of Arts in English with and Theatre Studies from University of Leicester, Master of Arts from Sheffield, Postgraduate Certificate in Education, English and Drama, awarded with distinction, University of Hull, UK. Master of Education, Literacy from Sheffield, and Master of Arts, Educational Research Methodology from University of Sheffield as well, awarded with commendation. And of course, PhD from Sheffield. And his achievement in 2021, despite COVID, he has quite a number of publications. There are a lot. Okay, let hear it from what Mark has done. He's invited to join the editorial board for the Sage Handbook of Critical Pedagogies. He's been invited to join the editorial board for Brill Research, Perspective in Critical Cultural Curriculum Studies, lead editor, Qualitative Research Journal. This is in Q2, SCOPUS Q2, and going to be Q1 very soon. He's a co-convener, Qualitative Research Methodologies, Special Interest Group, Australian Association for Research in Education. He has supervised 12 PhD students to successful completion. He's a Vice Chancellor Citation for Excellence in Research and Research Training. He's a Vice Chancellor Citation for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, programs that enhance learning. He is also a series editor for Critical New Literacies, the practice of English language teaching and learning from Brill and Sens Rotterdam. He's invited to be guest editor for international special issue on LGBT inclusion in schools in Frontiers in Educational Journal. He is invited to be on the International Advisory Board of the Third International Conference, Paulo Freire, the Global Legacy in the US, and he's give the keynote speech, Intersecting Identities, Intersectionality in the Disabled Community, University of Malta in October 2020. So without further ado, please give a big round of applause to Mark.
Thank you very much. I am going to ask you again, please turn on your videos. I find it, looking at little black screens, a little bit discombobulating. I actually kind of, and also because I'm very nosy as a person. I like to see people, especially people who are a lot more attractive than I am. Always makes me happy. Oh, I see Cloud. See, Cloud is lovely. I'm looking at Cloud and I'm thinking, what, you know, yeah, I'd much rather be looking at Cloud than looking at a black screen. That's made my day, looking at Cloud and looking at Narong Dej. They're much nicer. Lovely. So, what are we going to do today? We're going to be looking at the post-qualitative turn in social inquiry. And I apologize up front because what I'm going to do is I'm going to top load it with theory. So I'm going to be talking about some of the theoretical premises and underpinnings of what exactly I mean, or what is meant by the post-qualitative turn in social science. Moving through the theory, we are at the end of my little talk going to have an illustration of practice, yeah? And that illustration of practice is going to show you an example I've taken from my research. And it's an example of methodology. Now, it's probably not anything like you will recognize as being a methodology chapter. However, this was a methodology chapter. And it illustrates to you much, I suppose, of what I'm going to be talking. Now, Kenny has very kindly agreed to read the part of Auntie for me.
Auntie Kenny.
Narongdej is going to read the part of mother for me. Yeah, you may look confused at the moment, but it will kind of make sense. And Cloud, I am asking you to read the part of ingenue for me. Okay, Cloud?
I'm sorry, which part of the
Ingenue? We'll get to that, yeah? Now, all of these parts, while they may have ladies' names, are actually men. They're all men. But we'll explain that when we get to the script. So let's make a start. And I'm going to make a start by citing two of my favorite authors. The first one is Robert Frost. And Robert Frost wrote a poem called The Road Not Taken. And he said, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Much of my research work has traveled down a road which could best be described as being a little bit uncertain, yeah? But Virginia Woolf has advised that as writers, we must get in touch with the reader by putting the reader before something which he recognizes or she recognizes, which stimulates the reader's imagination and makes them willing to cooperate in the far more difficult business of intimacy. Now, I think, and I believe, research is an intimate act. It's something that we do with people. It's a relationship. And for good research to happen, you have to think about that relational quality from the start of the research process. So the new post-qualitative or post-foundational approach to research is not a rejection of the old. It's not a rejection of the pre-existing methodological approaches that are used in social science research, but rather it's a thoroughfare to do things differently. Post-foundational, post-qualitative research does not rely on paradigmatic inscriptions of method. Rather, it draws on philosophical concepts that advocate the importance of fluidity, liminality, and the reorientation of thought. Thinking beyond what is already known and from outside methodological structure is a hallmark of post-qualitative research. In my own practice as a post-qualitative researcher, I have come to realize that writing, interpreting, and analysis is an ongoing process which relies on reflexivity and can change and shift depending on who the participant, who the researcher, and who the reader is, how they are feeling, and how their experiences have shaped their interpretations. What means something to one person might hold an entirely different meaning for another, depending on how they are situated in the world. So this notion of situatedness is central to understanding one of the key ideas in the post-qualitative turn. So in my research, I have focused on meaning making. And I think that is best understood through the lens of theory, which describes how individual experience affects one how reads the world. So I draw on queer theory. As a gay man, I'm heavily invested in the theoretical lens of what queer theory offers. I'm also invested in critical social justice theory. I'm also invested in Marxist anti-capitalist theory. So the places that I go to make meaning and to make sense of the world are not some prescribed method that you find in a textbook of how to do action research or how to do case study. The first place that I go to is theory, because theory is the tool that is most helpful for me to make meaning and understand the phenomena with which I am studying on. So if we think about Merleau-Ponty's interpretive philosophical work surrounding phenomenological hermeneutics, then there are no rules or procedures that humans follow to make meaning. Rather, understanding comes from an individual reading of how one is placed in the world. How I read the world, how Kenny reads the world, how Nuntia reads the world, how Cloud reads the world is not going to be the same, because we have different genders, we have different ethnicities, we have different sexualities, yeah, we have different abilities. So what I'm suggesting is that the here and now of personal experience means that one can never view a situation from an objective standpoint. We are all intrinsically linked to the world we live in, and therefore we all view it from a subjective position, where our own unique historical lived experiences determine how we make meaning. Rousseau has talked about the uniqueness of human experience, and that an individual's interpretation of the world will always be different to another. And accordingly, the more one interprets, the more one finds not the fixed meaning, but only other interpretations. Therefore, the purpose of the post-qualitative turn with which I have been involved with is not to answer questions, is not to throw up certainties. Rather, it is to engage with the meandering of thoughts, to challenge what is thought to be known, and to ask questions of what yet has to be contemplated. Post-qualitative research is informed by a significant ontological return in social theory. And we must hold the contention that ontology, epistemology, and in ethics are inseparable. We can't separate them out. Who we are, how we think, and how we behave is part of a continuum. And that is best captured in the neologism ethico-onto-epistemology. Yeah, they are all connected. Now, it has been suggested that posthumanism remains the catalyst for post-qualitative research. Such is the entanglement with issues of place and climate change. And we only have to think about COVID at the moment and how it's turned the world upside down. We only have to think about the earthquake in Haiti. We only need to think about the resurgence of the Taliban in Afghanistan to understand the ecology within which we are located, and that informs our thinking. So post-qualitative research I understand it to be a series of speculative gestures. In what has been termed the Anthropocene, we are living in the Anthropocene moment. And in doing so, we have to acknowledge our entanglements with human and with non-human others, and our ability to affect and be affected by these entanglements. We have to think with the land. We have to think with water. We have to think with air. These are not something that are separate from ourselves. These are some things which are part of us, because if we don't understand our relationship with water or with air or with the ground, then what are we part of? And for too long, there has been this notion that we are in control of those things. We are not. We are in an organic relationship, because if the air becomes polluted, if the water becomes polluted, if the land upon which we walk changes, then so too do we change. Yeah. I lived in Thailand for 7 years as a teacher of English. Yeah. And while I was in Thailand, my partner came from a very small village in Korat. And I used to go up to the very small village in Korat. My experience, my encounter with that land was completely different from Shaird's connection to that land, because it was not my land. It was not part of my cultural understanding. I didn't have the heritage. I struggled to make sense. I struggled to make meaning. It had to be translated for me. Yeah. So thinking about subjectivities within the Anthropocene is to think about as a speculative gesture. The experience of the Anthropocene is unfolding unequally, with different people and species impacted in different ways. Before the start of this session, I was talking to Kenny about what's happened with COVID. I have been in lockdown since February of 2020. I live on my own. Well, I live on my own with 2 dogs and a cat. I was in lockdown all of last year. I've been in lockdown all of this year. It's highly likely we're going to be in lockdown again next year. We have a curfew. A couple of days ago, I was talking to a former student of mine from Thailand. He was explaining to me what was happening in Bangkok between the 3 different groups of the pro-government, the pro-monarchist, and the anarchists, and how the very fabric, how the very day-to-day business of life in Bangkok has been changed by the ecology of COVID. Yeah. So if we start to position a post-qualitative inquiry as experimentation and creation of the new, and we are led by theory, then what we are allowing is our understanding to become more complex. Over the past few years as an academic, I've learned to read hard, I've learned to write hard, and I've learned to think hard about the many named and multi-headed tangle of ecological and social breakdowns. And these breakdowns are happening in the shifting assemblage between body, knowledge, and place. The model of moving in and out of knowing and unknowing, and of between theory and practice, has always underpinned my research process. my understanding of situated knowledges and their incompleteness and impartiality is that they are able to join with one another to see together without claiming to be another. Other people's knowledges expose parts of the world we cannot see and parts of ourselves that we cannot see. Situated knowledge does not depend upon a logic of discovery, but on the power of charged social relations of conversation. That is tricky and it's unsettling because it requires negotiating boundaries in a shifting and changing world. Being in conversation is risky because it opens us up to surprise, yeah? It requires boundaries and surrender. It means we will not always be in control. And post-qualitative research involves critiquing that representational logic of us as researchers as being in control. The representational schema assumes two things. It assumes that language is able to accurately represent reality. It assumes a critique of representational logic, which calls for non-representational research, in the sense of not coming up with some exact match or simulacrum for the things we find and what's going on, but for answering them creatively with interventions, with questions and responses of our own. And this is where we come into writing, yeah? Because writing quite often is seen as being unproblematic. We go and do the research, we collect the data, and then we write it up. Within the post-qualitative turn, writing is in itself a method of knowing and knowledge making. Some of the story of our research can only be known through writing, through the gathering up of our thoughts and processes, and locating them back within theory. Bochner and Ellis describe the vacuous method of writing that is often employed within the fields of social science. Traditional map scientific reporting, where there is a prodigious privileging of conventional circles in academia, yeah? And it usually thwarts for those of us who lie outside of those realms. Such papers are often stylistic, verbose, and only reachable by those with the tools of experience. I often wonder how many of my papers ever get read. How many of my papers end up gathering dust in some library somewhere? As an editor of a Q2 journal, yeah, I have to read a lot of submissions. And the ones that get rejected are the ones that start off in very complicated, highfalutin, sophisticated academic language, which tells me nothing more than the author is elitist and trying to be clever. What is the point of our research if it doesn't get read? And if we are writing it in such a way that it's only being read by our colleagues in hallowed institutions, then I would say don't waste your ink and don't waste your paper, because research has to have an impact. Jones has discussed his frustration with feeling boxed in by traditional forms of research and how his representation led him to performative texts. He says that performative texts honor the people who give interviews. They have effects, they make differences, they enact realities, they help bring into being what is being discovered. Because we've got to remember that writing is never neutral. It's never innocent or objective. There is a need for writers to be aware of and acknowledge how our beliefs, our values, our experiences, our biography, our disciplinary, theoretical, and methodological affiliations affect what we write and how we write. Writing in the post-qualitative turn is a socially and politically rooted activity because as writers, we are socially and politically embedded. And the research has to recognize that this method of writing is in itself performative. So we start to think about qualitative research and writing as a socio-historical construct. It's located in unique context. The premise that qualitative and quantitative research should be evaluated by the same criteria can be traced back to the very earliest moments of qualitative inquiry, which commenced in the early 19th century. During this traditional period, ethnographic researchers wrote from colonizing perspectives, adhering to traditional notions of scientific validity. The crisis of representation and the postmodern turn in the 1980s and 90s brought with it an understanding of multiple realities and truths and the associated ethical implications of contesting scientific positivism, with the idea that there are universal, definitive and value-free truths that transcend personal experience, opinion and bias. There have been subsequent paradigmatic transitions or historical moments, and they overlap in the present. There have been 8 defined moments of qualitative inquiry. But of particular relevance, I think, is the 4th moment, which is the crisis of representation, which focused on the predicament of legitimization, representation, and praxis. The crisis of representation, which occurred throughout the paradigm wars during the postmodern resistance of the 70s and 80s, challenged neoliberal discourse and those that believe that research should be firmly rooted in scientific paradigms. The positivist, interpretist, opposing view of the world and how social reality should be represented and described has not been easily reconciled. And Sparks has noted that it's not just the ideas that came under attack, but also the style in which these ideas were represented in terms of how we write, explain, describe, and index the social world. The post-experimental 6th moment, which was 1995 to 2000, paved the way for the advent of post-qualitative research due to how it advocated for new ways of knowing, understanding, and framing the empirical world. Researchers, post-qualitative researchers, moved past traditional forms of representation and explored exciting and creative methods such as fictional ethnography, poetry, and performative text. They investigated alternative ways of interpreting and representing the human condition. In the 7th moment, the criteria for evaluating qualitative work became located around moral and ethical decisions, which is embedded in aesthetic understandings that nothing is value-free and that knowledge has certain types of power. As we transverse across the period of the 8th moment, there is a call for other things, for us as researchers, to have critical conversations about where we go from here. From my research's conception, I have been aware that in each of the moments of qualitative inquiry, and despite each moment being contested, that my work has been to challenge traditional notions of validity and legitimacy, and in doing so, opening up possibilities, which has enabled different types of research to come into fruition, which is concerned with the development of different textualities, ways of writing that do not delegitimize people's experiences on the basis of their sexuality, their race, their gender, their disability, and which are embedded in the principles of social justice. Opening up these possibilities has led to a period of conflict and tension, again due to a positivist reigning in that has disputed the value of qualitative research and calls for evidence impact-based practice. Postmodern and post-structuralist approaches to qualitative research are often negatively critiqued due to accusations that they are not rooted in quantifiable constructs of reality, proof, and truth. Instead of viewing one as more legitimate than the other, we all need to consider them as part of the same jigsaw puzzle. They all have their own merits and viability as forms of social description. My absorption of some of the criticisms of post-qualitative research draws from within academic fields aligned with orthodox paradigms of reliability, validity, and objectivity. And central to these criticisms is the role of the researcher, that it's an expectation that once the researcher has finished the job of collecting the data, he or she simply vanishes from the product, yeah? There is a sense that researchers often feel they must maintain an outsider's perspective by not revealing their own personal and emotional connections with the research. However, in neoliberal times, we have to venture past quantifiable notions that claim certainty about knowledge and instead place emphasis on affective states, such as empathy to understand the world. When a reader connects on an emotional level with a story, when they get to view that person and their life world through a different set of eyes, then the stories that we tell ourselves and each other are judged on a criterion of verisimilitude rather than the more demanding criteria of verifiability. Reflecting on Boyer's notion of scholarship, it's crucially important to the health of our research communities for scholars to use the knowledge in their fields to benefit society, and that universities and their graduates must concern and be connected by that notion of the Anthropocene in which we are located. Truthfulness or verisimilitude is created as we are drawn into an authentic sensory experience. I am very mindful of the methodological norms that structure my research endeavor. I'm equally mindful of the criticisms that come with transgressing them, because norms are not passive descriptors of conduct that lie idly waiting to be used. Norms are managers of conduct which command, oblige, recommend, and guide ourselves. The words ought and should are everyday normative words, which we often confuse with right and wrong. Thinking about the notion of right and wrong in relation to post-qualitative research has to some extent required me to engage in decolonizing acts. The spectre of Cartesian rationalism is a haunting presence, and I'm mindfully aware that there are those who would ask, of what I have done, is this research? However, there are voices that have asked questions about what counts as research, And these have guided me beyond methodological enclosure towards rethinking not only what I have done, but how I tell the story of what I have done. St. Pierre says, experimentation is required in post-qualitative inquiry, and it cannot be accomplished within a methodological enclosure. Experimentation is risky, creative, surprising, remarkable. It cannot be measured, predicted, controlled, systemized, formalized, described in a textbook, or called forth by pre-existing approved methodological processes, methods, and practice. When I have new PhD students, the first thing that I say to them is, do not go to the methodological textbook. Do not go to the rules and regulations that tell you how to do it. Sparks has advised researchers not to be afraid. Do not be afraid to reveal your experiences or your investments within the work. How I have come to understand my research practice is from multiple perspectives which are embodied in social, historical, and geographical locations. When we understand that situated knowledge comes from a range of perspectives and positions, we have a much more adequate, richer, better account of the world to live in it well as critical, reflective researchers. Situatedness is a productive condition for making meaning, and writing is a big part of my life as an academic. I do not see the separation between writing my life, both social and historical, and writing as part of a critical research process. I have to make my uses of writing visible. I become part of the writing as I bring myself to the story as a researcher. So in her refusal of methodology, St. Pierre shares her belief in the persistent critique that enables a transition from traditional methodology to something different. She suggests that post-qualitative inquiry creates space for something else to happen, something beyond methodology. And she recognizes that the post-qualitative must be reinvented each time. It will not systematically repeat a pre-existing research process to produce a recognizable result, but it's there to experience, create something new and different. Now, I've been speaking for quite a long time, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes off, and I would like you to reflect. I would like you to think about your positionality. I would like you to think about how you locate your research. I would like you to think about your ethical involvement in the research process. I would like you to think about the ways in which you come to your interpretation and how you utilize theory as part of your research process. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to think about that. So positionality, locating the research, ethics, interpretation, and theory. You must excuse me because I'm going to have a drink of coffee and I'm going to smoke a cigarette. So if anyone has got any feedback on either of those areas, please unmute yourself and we can have a little chat.
Mark, would you like to share your slides or your talk?
I am going to do in a minute, yeah.
Okay.
Because we need to read the script. But if you're thinking about your positionality, who are you? Who are you in the research process? What does it mean for you to be a researcher? Who are you, Kenny, as a researcher? To what extent do you engage with your cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied privilege as a researcher? To what extent do you engage with your bilingualism as a form of double consciousness of knowing? Do you bring these things in?
Yes, actually, but I think each research requires my positionality differently. It depends on a particular group of people I'm researching on particular topics, whether those people, to what extent that my involvement is needed.
So what is the relationship then between your positionality and the theory that you use? What theory do you draw upon? How do you situate theory as being in conversation with your positionality?
I tend to be on the same level with my participants. I would like to engage them as a person rather than approaching them as a researcher. So I don't normally bring in myself as a professor, PhD, blah blah, with me when I have to contact the individual. So I would normally because I want them to be as open as much as possible. So I would normally approach them as the someone who is eager for knowledge, who is eager for information and something that I could share with them or I could learn from them and they could learn from me. I would think about reciprocal positioning between me as a researcher and my participants.
Okay, so we're getting into transformative understandings about power and relational subjectivities, which within a positivistic paradigm, they wouldn't care about. They would say knowledge is there to be discovered, to be found, to be collected. Knowledge is not there to be constructed. And you started to unpack some of the kind of the constructedness of that process.
Because I think interpretation varies and depends on how I position myself with them and how much I can draw information and experience from them.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to offer? Anybody else?
Okay, if no one has share, I like to share one thing about ethics as well.
Yeah, sure.
Nowadays, a lot of universities, at Mahidol University especially, we need to do ethics approval before embarking on our research project. So a lot of researchers think that once our research is approved by the ethics committee, we think we can do anything ethically. But actually, it's just a piece of paper. But the practice is also need to be maintained. Okay, it's not just about getting a paper accepted, but the practice needs to be accepted as well. Or ethically delivered.
I totally agree. Ethics is never an institutional process. Ethics is what you do with the people, how you do it with the people. It's threaded throughout the engagement, its relationships. I mean, I think when researchers deviate from traditional mapped scientific reporting of human relationships, then they open up the possibility for the construction of storied knowledge, yeah, and the widening of audience participation, yeah. And this thinking differently invites us to alternatives of methodological orthodoxy. Now, there are 4 ways that have been identified of knowing. Knowing as embodiment, knowing as emotionality, knowing through deliberate imprecision, and knowing as situated inquiry. Knowing as embodiment is to know through the hunger, taste, discomfort, and the pains of our body. Knowing emotionally is about opening us to worlds of passions, intuitions, fears, and betrayals. Knowing through deliberate imprecision is about rethinking our ideas about the world, about finding ways of knowing that are slippery and indistinct. And knowing in situated inquiry is about thinking, how far is knowledge able to travel, and whether it still makes sense in other locations. Now, Roland Barthes has talked about a writerly text that requires a reader's participation and an involvement as a writer and co-producer, as distinct from a readerly text, which is a passive site already inscribed with preordained outcomes and meanings. And Barthes describes the ideal text as one that does not distinguish between the reader and the writer due to how networks are many and interact. How being able to surpass the text is to do with the galaxy of signifiers, not a structure of signifiers. It has no beginning. It has several entrances, none of which can be declared to be the main one. The codes it mobilizes as far as the eyes can reach. And Barthes' notion of the writerly text is linked to Baudrillard's concept of relational aesthetics. And it postulates a foundation for the intermingling of the relation, human condition, and social context. This fusion, he asserts, is in the participatory element of the spectator. It's in the agency which occurs because of the interaction. I've said before, it's important to avoid using complex academic language, because as Wittgenstein noted, language is the limits of our world. And what has become the traditional academic structure of introduction, literature review, methodology, findings, discussions, limitations, conclusion, has to be read as making particular truth claims grounded in the natural and physical sciences, where the key goal has been objectivity, avoidance of bias, and generalizability. Now, if this is what you want to do or what you're required to do by an institution, then that's fine, as long as it's understood and acknowledged within the text. Ethical writing, as Kenny alluded to, is always about being honest about exactly what is responsible. Ethical authors and researchers take ownership of how they write, what they write, and how they write. This demands that we subject our words, our style, our structures, our formats, our relationships to critical scrutiny, and recognize that as post-qualitative researchers, ultimately, we are situated within our own autobiographical interpretation, our historical, local, specific subjectivities. That we are the product of our vocabulary and our skill with words, and the realization to support a particular argument with our theorizing. In the following script, which I'm now going to share with you, I have used the principles of post-foundational, post-qualitative process as research, as a way of evocatively showing, not telling, to situate the reader in a writerly engagement. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to share my screen with you. I don't know how I do this. Can someone give me access? Have I got it?
Yes, you can just share it now. There's no.
Okay. Can people see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we have our dramatis personae. So I've said Kenny. I would like Kenny to read the part of Auntie. I would like Narongdej to read the part of Mother. And is Cloud still there?
Cloud. Okay, let me check.
Or has he run away?
Meg. Hello. Meg อยู่เปล่า? He's in China, so I don't know whether. Oh, Meg, he's here. He's here. Okay.
Are you there, Cloud?
I'm here, Professor.
Okay, so I'd like you to read the part of Ingenue. I will read the part of novice researcher and all the incidental bits and bobs. Okay, so we have Mother, which is Narongdej, who's a flamboyant, all singing and dancing host for the occasion. We have Auntie, which is Mother's ex-lover, a butchish top.
I thought you were gonna say sex lover. Okay, ex-lover. It's so close.
Well, sex lover, ex-lover, the same thing. We have Ingenue, Mother's protege and work colleague. And we have a novice researcher, which is me, friend to Mother. So Act 1, Scene 1. A dinner party. At the table are arranged 4 30-something gay men. Tonight is the first time as a group they have met face to face. 2 of the men are ex-lovers, 2 are current work colleagues, and 2 are ex-flatmates from university. The conversation reveals their chosen occupations. All are teachers. And as Mother, the slightly flamboyant host, clears away the dishes from the first course, refreshes drinks, changes the CD to yet another talk song compilation, he announces...
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Enough of work talk.
He embarks on a different course of conversation. And as the talk shifts to the dishing of dirt, the previously formal atmosphere is replaced by squeals of delight, a verbal applause at the revelation of the intimate. As more and more scurrilous gossip pours forth, appetites are whetted. Another bottle of expensive imported red wine is opened, and Mother embarks on hailing the outrageous, each snippet punctuated with plumes and swirls of tobacco smoke.
Testicles are huge, and my God, can he fuck. All day, Sunday, in the bed shaking, and more shaking. My poor Genema. He just kept on going and going.
Well, I hope you remember to douche. I did a guy in London last week, and would you believe it? He had a tuft of toilet paper sticking off his ass.
Everybody laughs.
Me too.
What did you do?
What did you think I did?
You mean you went ahead?
Listen and learn. His thighs were amazing. Real rugby player thighs. Gorgeous. Wasn't going to pass up on those.
To Antedly pointedly.
I've heard a good blowjob can be had at the cottage of Street.
The ointment can't be working.
To
How
mother.
is the... Oh,
Sorry.
it's
Yeah.
me continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the ointment can't be working. How's the rash? And what about you? Sat there looking like butter wouldn't melt. I have been hearing some interesting stories about you.
He taught me all I know. When we first met, I was a fresh-faced innocent.
And the nearest you get, and sorry, and the nearest you get to that now is French.
Well, I was thinking, if you had all managed to look at the outline of the research that I emailed.
Oh, we'll get to that later. Have something more to drink. Is it true you shagged your cousin?
What have you been telling everyone?
You've done worse.
Well?
Technically, he wasn't my real cousin. He was adopted.
All my cousins are girls.
And your practice.
An hour later, after what could be described as a confessional epic, the flow of conversation started to ebb.
Do you have any specific questions that you are going to ask us?
Where do you want me to start? I could about myself talk all night.
Nothing new there then.
Everybody laughs.
Well, I enjoyed reading Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman comics.
That's because you are a closet muscle Mary fan. All you were interested in was the pictures of ripping thighs and pecs. It was your formative wank fodder. Do we all remember the cartoon called He-Man? He had unfeasibly large thighs. He was absolutely fantastic. I fucking love. If you look at the rugby players' thighs, they are absolutely gorgeous. You know, you couldn't possibly walk with the thighs of He-Man. I love touching thighs.
Oh, shut up about size. Can we talk about something else?
What about Telly? I have used to have a thing for a man from Atlantis. He did this fragile action that I found very, very erotic. I used to watch it loads and thought it absolutely fantastic. It turned me on in a way I didn't know I could be turned on. I used to look forward to it on a Saturday evening. And once it was finished, I was upset because I had to wait another week to see it again. I can't remember what the stories were about, but I remember him going through the water. It must have been terrible special effects, but that action in the water turned me on. At the age 8 or 9, that guy turned me on. It plugged me into the whole idea that, you know, I might be gay.
Oh, and the Thunderbirds. What about that in terms of getting your rocks off? I mean, in terms of cartoon characters, I thought Virgil was the better looking out of all of them and the Thunderbirds.
I must have been about 8, or me, my brother and his mates were on the school field. It was the only bit of grass we had nearby, and we came across a porn magazine, a strange porn magazine. My brother and the boys who lived next door started to tear it all up. There was this one bit where there was this man or woman, and I wanted that bit. I only wanted the page with the boy bit.
Act 2, Act 1, Scene 2. 4 weeks later, the men are seated on scatter cushions. Mother is finishing off lighting candles, pouring wine, rearranging cushions, and making sure that the scattered bowls of olives and nuts are within easy reach. I don't feel that it really worked last time. I mean, I think maybe I wasn't clear enough in signposting what it is that I wanted to discuss.
I disagree. I don't think it worked last time. Because you are too directed. You were quite the busy little queen, I know of old. I feel that you wanted to get at something, but I didn't quite know what. You were asking all these questions and it's really just shut me off from what I wanted to talk about. I feel I had to keep on track because this is your research. I wanted to be useful, but I don't think you got what you wanted. It would be so much better if you just let me talk. It would be more natural.
And so the evenings continued, and I more or less decided to abandon my carefully planned roadmap. And as I did, the conversation began to travel in the direction that I had originally intended. Is this way of discussion useful? How do you feel about doing this as a group?
It's not a problem. It's not stopped me talking.
I'm happy to talk about myself. I'm happy to talk in a gay context as well, in terms of my everyday life. I think I live in a very heterosexual world. A lot of my friends are straight, but I do have pockets of my friends who are gay, and we don't normally talk about these issues. I mean, it's lovely that we can talk this way about being who we are.
Yeah, even though they share lifts to work, we normally don't talk about this stuff.
This is just an extension of stuff that goes on in my head. So for me, I am trying to make it as sociable as possible. It's fun.
I find our evenings very interesting, and at the moment, it is even more so because at the moment I live with my parents. I've moved back homes recently as my father has been diagnosed with bowel cancer. I tend not to talk about my life with my parents because even though they know that I'm gay, it's not part of their life. I go down to London every 2 weeks to see my boyfriend and have a fantastic time. And then I come back. I suppose I'm living in a very heterosexual bubble. So to do this, it's a bit like free therapy. I was saying, joking to my boyfriend, that has been good for me as my therapist only ever made notes rather than recording my sessions. You know, when you talk with people about things, they go, oh yeah, I did that too. You get a sense that you are not alone. And sometimes you just need reminding that gay people are everywhere. You know what I mean? I see you as a person who is actually in the group, but you have to jump out sometimes. I suppose I see you as a subjective observer.
You are not at clinical or clear cut, and you are not being unsympathetic. There is a friendship value to this, so I don't feel defensive. I feel that you are testing the waters.
Sweetie, you are being marked. I actually think you are enjoying yourself, which is quite nice. I don't find you a threat whatsoever, and I am, it has to be said, thoroughly enjoying myself.
I think that you're getting a lot more than you anticipated. The brief that you gave us was not narrow. I think it has been exceeded.
I think the stories will come if you let us talk. That maybe endless eons of tape, but I think the stories will come when we are talking. I have quite enjoyed hearing about our commodities tonight. I have all lived through the common experience and thinking about it geographically. I mean, you were in the Wirral, I was in Cheshire, you were here in Yorkshire, and you were in Humberside. You were in one big line that spanned the breadth of England, but we were all living through the same experience. I think that is interesting. Maybe it is because we are gay that we recognize those things, or maybe it is because we were all a familiar age at the same time.
Act 1, Scene 3. The men are sat in mother's front room. All are relaxing, having emptied a bottle of red wine and 3/4 of a bottle of gin. Mother gets up and crosses over to the CD player and inserts the greatest hits of Burt Bacharach. At the sound of "What the world needs now is love, sweet love" filters the room. He lets out a sudden shriek, points to the window and declares,
Oh, not again. That's twice this week.
Auntie and ingenue rush over to the sofa and arch their necks in the direction of the window. What is it? What's going on?
The couple over the road, they like to put on a show.
Oh my, he's gorgeous.
Novice,
Oh, sorry.
novice researcher joins Auntie and ingenue on the sofa, and all three start to shriek with laughter at the sight of a muscular, handsome young man displaying his naked buttocks in the upstairs window of the opposite house. He is joined by a young woman who suddenly disappears from view, and as all three jostle for position as the curtains are abruptly drawn.
Sports.
Well, they are not usually that shy. Anyone for anything?
You drink too much.
Oh, is that have we done, or is there anything else you want to squeeze in?
I think we can call it a night. I have a lot to be going on with for the moment. That is, unless anybody has anything else they want to say or to add to what's already been said. Are there any questions you want to ask me?
Why gay men? Why choosing gay men for this? Why not lesbians as well?
I wanted to focus specifically on gay men's experiences of text. Besides, I felt I had to limit the size of the sample, otherwise I'd be drowning in data.
I am quite enjoying doing this, talking about different things and hearing all the different point of views.
We've revealed quite a bit tonight.
Some more than others.
Yeah, but it has been on more of an emotional level.
Is this idea of our focused discussion useful in terms of your understanding of what it is I'm trying to do? Is it equitable? Do you feel involved?
It's not a problem. It's not stopped me talking.
I thought we were going to have a one-to-one session.
I think that it is going to be harder. Doing it this way, we get to bounce ideas off each other. I don't think you should ask us more about our attitudes to sex and relationships, because then you will understand more about what makes us tick.
I am more than happy to talk about myself, and I think it's fabulous to talk in a gay way.
Yeah.
I think we should stick with the way that we did it tonight. That is, if you haven't got any objections, I think the text will come if you let us talk. Yeah, I think the text will come. You know what I found interesting about this evening, and what I really liked was the few moments when we talked about the things that we have all shared, and we all went, oh God, yeah. That TV series about the two Liverpool boys, the one summer program, and we all jumped in and started talking at the same time. Tomorrow, I'm going to ask my boyfriend if he watch, but as for tonight, I have got to love you and leave you. I have an hour drive home and I'm feeling sleepy.
Oh, Boone Heath, you are such a party pooper. Anyone for a stuffed olive or a vodka jelly?
Act 1, Scene 4. The men are sat in mother's front room. The remains of a paella and sangria are strewn across the floor. And as they stretch out, relax, and make themselves even more comfortable, they sink back into an oversized armchair, stretched out on sofas, and start to make fun of the novice researcher's antiquated tape recorder.
Have you plenty of batteries, dear?
Oh, belt up. I've searched high and low for one of these. They don't sell them anymore. I've had to borrow this one.
I have enjoyed tonight. It has been a good to look back. I think that unless if you live in a world of philosophical academia, which very few of us do, that there isn't time to reflect with a group of like-minded people about who we are. I think tonight has been very useful for me because I have been able to say what I am. In the discussions we have had tonight, I have had to think more carefully why I have been talking and about what I have been saying. I think that through talking together, I think I know myself a little bit more than previously, because in my head, my mental voice tend to give out these disjointed ideas, but saying them by they have become almost physical, and I have been able to see what I think. Does that make sense?
I've enjoyed the commonalities. We have all had common experiences, and since the last session, I have thought about that quite a lot.
What are your thoughts about participating in this way?
I would say that our commentaries on what each of us had to say have made me think.
How?
Oh, about stuff that happened in my past. I suppose it doesn't matter.
Well, for a start, I don't feel it has hindered us doing it this way, and this is the best you can get. At the outset, I thought that you might have had a set agenda, that you had a list of research questions you wanted us to answer. But what has happened from letting us talk is that things have come out, and I guess that you will be able to pick up from that what you need. I think it's important that this kind of research goes on, because academia becomes stale and without the human element. So often you get to read stuff that is supposed to be what is in people's minds, how they feel, but it reads like those doing that research haven't actually asked the people. It is the same in education with all that carry on and talk about psychology of education and the philosophy of children. But as a teacher, if you lose sight of that 7-year-old who comes in your class and in the morning with a snotty nose and a blooded knee, and if you forget that child might as well fucking like a match with your research because it doesn't impact back on the people you're talking about. Don't kill the fucking rainforest to do it. I'll be very interested to read this and see what you get from it. I think that what you might get from it will be different from what I get. I'm getting to have interesting evenings talking about somebody I don't usually talk about. Me, I don't often do that.
I think that is
I'm gonna you get the idea. I'm gonna stop that there because it kind of goes on. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. That was a chapter in a book all about methodology.
Oh.
That was a methodology chapter that you've just read.
Oh. Wow. For real? For real?
For real. For real. That was I was invited to write a chapter in a book written by Professor Pat Sykes and Professor Anthony Potts about insider research. And I thought long and hard about how I could write methodologically about doing insider research. And I thought, okay, so I want to show what my field work was like. So I wrote that. That was the methodology. That is a chapter about methodology.
And it was a real recorded conversation?
Yep.
Oh.
In fact, when I wrote it up as a chapter, Anthony Potts, one of the editors, had a little bit of a meltdown. because he said to Pat Sykes, we can't publish this. We can't publish this. He said, look at the first page. He's talking about a man with toilet paper sticking out of his backside. We can't do this. He's talking about fucking. He's talking about thighs. We can't publish this. And Pat argued back and said, we have to understand that methodologically, Mark is not doing something that is immediately recognizable as a methodology chapter. It doesn't look anything like a methodology chapter. But I set out with the aim to deliberately do that because my theoretical lens was queer theory. And queer theory was about unsettling and disrupting the normative narratives within the research process. So along with writing a methodology chapter as a play, I wrote poems. I used images. All that stuff that I spoke about earlier in the qualitative, the post-qualitative turn, about thinking with theory, about being situated, about creating a writerly text, is what you have just experienced reading that script. Did you have any questions about any of that?
I find the what we did in terms of if this is a methodology part, I find it very fuzzy. I find it very, very non-linear and unexpected. But again, I understood that I have understood that in terms of writing itself, it's if we I mean as a young researcher or novice researcher do this, we wouldn't get our paper published or even accepted. It would be maybe rejected from the desk.
No,
editor.
you would get it. You would get accepted if you sent it to my journal.
I would, huh?
If you sent something like that to my journal, you've got a very high chance of it getting published. Because Qualitative Research Journal has the aim and of scope of deliberately being provocative and doing things differently.
Oh my gosh, this is interesting. I'm not sure whether our audience can follow what we are talking about in terms of research writing.
When I came to defend that thesis, because it was part of my PhD, I got to the end of my viva and the external examiner said, I want you to write another chapter. I want you to explain what you were doing. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Because the very fact that you want me to explain what I'm doing is buying into a normative orthodoxy around research process. If you have to work out what I'm doing, if you don't understand what I'm doing, that's your problem. That's your work as the reader. It's not my job as the reader to explain it for you, because that is a very unqueer thing to do. And he looked at me, thought for a minute, and he said, you're right, passed without any revisions. Because I was working, that methodology chapter was theoretical. It was deeply theoretical. It was embedded in the paradigm of queer theory. You know, I mean, I hope that in sharing that chapter with you, that you were at some point in the room with us, that you got a sense of what it was like, of what my field work was like, because it was nothing like I expected. you know, we had half of us were drunk because we were being fed red wine and mother was trying out recipes. The couple in the opposite actually happened. We were sat in their living room and all of a sudden we saw this man and woman start to have sex in the opposite window of the house, and we all rushed over to have a look. They saw us and closed the window. All of that stuff actually happened.
Oh my gosh,
And
this is very orthodoxical. Yeah.
I wanted to show that. I wanted to give people a sense of when they read my methodology chapter, that like they were in the room too, because it was nothing like I understood what I should be doing when I was doing methodology. Nothing like this was in a textbook on method or methodology. No, I had to make it up as I went along. And that's part of thinking creatively within the post-qualitative return. You can, you know, I always say to my PhD students, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you can justify it. You can, I don't care what you do. You can do a piece of interpretive dance if you want, as long as you can justify it. Because I think giving someone a methodological textbook who wants to do case study, actually you do more harm than good, because they just start to stick to the rules. And good research, you know, as my dad used to say, rules are made for the guidance of the wise and the discipline of fools. And as researchers, we should not be disciplined. We should be breaking the rules. We should be thinking along different lines of flight. That's our job. That's part of our job as academic workers. Anybody disagree? Anybody have anything else to say about what I've just said? I realize, you know, some of it people might find provocative, but again, I make the case that as an academic, my job is to be provocative.
Mark, there are some actually questions. Can you take some questions here? Okay. What do you think of the alternative ways to present your research results besides writing?
Okay, so at the moment, I've just finished supervising 2 PhD students that have written novels. They have written their PhD as a novel.
Huh. This is so unorthodoxical as well.
Yeah, well, they both passed. They wrote their they wanted to write a novel. They came to me because they knew that I would say yes. And they've just submitted their PhD as a novel. I have another PhD student at the moment that is doing her PhD as a series of art installations.
Huh. So what's the actually discipline? What's the major discipline?
Education.
In education.
Social science, yeah. But she's drawing upon post-colonial theory and whiteness studies to interrogate the relationship between her own identity as a white settler and the indigenous lands. And her methodology is walking. So she has walked the land. And as she has walked the land, she has picked bits of ephemera up from the land, bits of junk, bits of paper, and she's taken that and she's made it into an artwork. That's her PhD.
Hmm. Okay, following that question, will they be accepted by the research community as equally valid compared to those presented in writing?
Okay, again, it's what I said to you before. You know, when I supervise PhDs, yeah, and I have someone who's written a novel, I'm not going to send that PhD to a positivist researcher because they won't understand it. I know the community of scholars that get the work that I do. Yeah. So for example, you know, I was just asked to write a book, a chapter on effective capitalism. Yeah. Now I wrote an autoethnography. I wrote my own story. It's just come back, no revisions, fantastic. People, you know, people get a reputation for doing certain types of work. I am not interested in being evaluated or judged by positivist, quantifiable scholars. It's not what I do. It's like judging a kangaroo and a rabbit by the same criteria. Now, the kangaroo can jump, the rabbit can't. Why would I apply the same criteria? They do what they do, I do what I do, because I have a particular way of reading the world. And I know that I'm embedded in a community of scholars that also have my shared understanding of the world. I'm not going to send my work to a positivistic journal because it won't get accepted. You know, and my main frustration as an editor of a journal is that people keep sending me positivistic papers. I won't publish them. I reject them. I'm not interested in them. It's not how I see the world. Where if you send me a paper that's written as a poem or that's written as a play, that's when I'll start to get excited. But I don't want a paper that talks about an introduction, a lit review, methodology, methods, conclusion and discussion. No. Take it and submit it somewhere else. It's not what my journal is about, you know. And what is interesting is, and I think I said this to you earlier, you know, over the last 2 years, the readership of my journal has gone up and up and up. From last year when I was getting 1,500 readers a month, same month this year, I'm getting 6,000 readers. So the citation impact has gone up. As the citation impact goes up, so does the SCOPUS ranking. So, you know, we're about to move up to a Q1. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you can justify it. And, you know, positivists, quant people are going to look at my work and scratch their head and go, what the hell is this? But I don't care.
I would love you to be my reader. Another question. So it's just a degree in, I still be auntie. I don't know why. Sorry, I am very into the role now. So it's just a degree in creative writing. Where do you draw a line between creative writing and post-qualitative research then? Or the line is just not necessary at all?
Okay, what I say to people is that if you can't write, if you're not a good writer, don't attempt it. It's much easier to write a conventional piece of research than it is to do this stuff. You've got to be able to write. Yeah. Now, my background, my first degree, because you read out my qualifications, my first degree was in English and drama. Yeah. I had an arts background. Then I did a master's degree in theatre and film before I moved into education. So part of my training was in theatre, was in writing. It helps if you can write. If you can't write, it's much easier to do something which is more conventional.
Okay. Another question: how to use and assess qualitative research methods?
Well, there's a lot out there. I mean, if you look at Bochner and Ellis's work, they give a whole list of criteria for assessing qualitative research, yeah? But we're talking about the post-qualitative, the post-foundational.
Okay, following that previously a question about writing. If you when you mentioned that writing is important, so EFL students, like Thai students, would be further marginalized because they cannot write poems, fiction. Would this defeat the purpose of post-qualitative research?
No, because they can, because who says they have to do it in English? I had one of the best PhDs that I've supervised was a Cambodian student who is now the Dean of the Royal University of Phnom Penh. And his work was quite brilliant. And he was looking, it was in literacy, and he was looking at these things in Cambodia that they call chaps, yeah, which are certain types of text. He said to me, you know, I need to be authentic here. I want to be authentic. So I said, okay. I said, split up the page. I said, write half of it in English, write half of it in Cambodian. It's not the, you know, it's not your problem if the examiner doesn't understand Cambodian. That's not your problem. That's the examiner's problem. Why should you be disadvantaged by working in a colonial language? Because English is the language of colonialism. Why do you have to then be the hand servant to the colonialist discourse which says that you have to do it in English? Do it in Cambodian as well. Mix it up, play it around. And he did. And he passed without any revisions. So I don't think, you know, just because someone's working in a language other than English doesn't mean that they have to take on the colonial discourse and write in English. They can play around with it. They can use their own language. It's about, as I said before, it's about breaking the rules. You can do whatever you want to do. It's about thinking with theory. Yeah, and theory allows us, as Deleuze says, you know, to pursue our lines of flight, to move beyond the black walls, to see ourselves as a series of assemblages and entanglements. You know, it's rhizomatic. Research can go anywhere. As long as you allow yourself the freedom. And too often in grad school, too often as, you know, young PhD students, you encounter these people that say you have to do it this way. No, you don't. You have to do it your way. I mean, people keep saying, Cohen and Mannion. Now, if I had a bonfire, I would build a big bonfire and I would throw every book of Cohen and Mannion onto that bonfire, because it's, you know, I say to my students, for God's sake, don't read Cohen and Mannion. Don't. You'll ruin yourself. Because they read it as if it's a Bible. How to do action research, how to do case study, how to, you know, it's like, oh my God, no. Don't read that. Go to theory. Read theory. Because theory is what will give you, is what will open your world. There is nothing as theoretical as practice, and there is nothing as practical as theory.
Okay, following that, the audience asked, I'm reminded of an essay by Gloria and Zaldua, who wrote...
yeah, who wrote The Borderlands, the Mephisto, being in between, the liminality, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, again, you know, and I'm just going to kind of bring that up, because I always, Gloria Anzaldúa was really interesting, because she was a Chicano lesbian who was also had a disability, who wrote out of that space and argued about, and she's talked about being between the cracks and the benefit of being between the cracks, of being not one thing or the other, of being something in between, undefinable, because it's that constant process of becoming, without teleology, which is creative, as opposed to being something which is fixed and static. So yeah, I really like Gloria Anzaldúa's work, just like, you know, the work of Audre Lorde. I mean, you know, the famous quote from Audre Lorde is that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. You know, and if you think about that in relation to research, it means that we need to start doing research differently in order to produce different kind of knowledge, because otherwise we're just supporting the same old crumbling, decaying edifices which are headed up by white, old, able-bodied, heterosexual men who really should fuck off and retire. What we need...
You need to give this talk to the rest of the Thai, maybe to Thai.
What we need in the academy is more disabled people. We need more women. We need more queer people. We need more people of color. We don't need another white old man in a suit. God help us. Because they've fucked it up. They've fucked it up so far. And if that's the best model of practice, then you know what I said at the beginning, I'd rather go and get a job patting small fluffy animals, because I look at some of the idiots that are in universities, that are running universities. I wouldn't trust them to walk my dog over the road.
There's a question. Would you call this a marriage between humanities, parentheses, essays, and social sciences, parentheses, research? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back and answer that just while my cat at the moment is about to scratch my dog.
Sure.
So just let me go and separate my cat and dog, and then I'll come back, because the cat usually wins. So I'll be 1 minute.
Sure. Okay, at the moment, you guys can type in questions in our chat box, and also help us answer our evaluation form, so that we can plan our webinar in, you know, the one that you would love to hear. So that, yeah. By the way, this is our second webinar, a free webinar, and we are gonna have the next one in September. On the 10th of September, we have the editor-in-chief from the Language and Intercultural Communication Journal. So for those of you who are interested, please stay tuned. And
Okay, there were two more questions.
My cat was being very naughty. Sorry, so the question, what was the question, Kenny?
Okay, would you call this a marriage between the humanities, parentheses, essays, and social sciences, parentheses, research? The guy, I mean, this person is added that I hate to put things into boxes, but I think the boxes won't be away anytime soon.
Yeah, again, the notion of disciplinarity is not something that sits very comfortably with me. I wouldn't start to categorize things as being or belonging to certain disciplines. I'm much easier with the notion of transdisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity. I wouldn't silo them as being social sciences or humanities, arts, because I think, you know, why? What's the point? What's the purpose? What am I going to get out of putting these into this little group? All it's going to do is constrain me.
Okay. When you talk about this now, it reminds me, okay, this person said that's what I was thinking, transdisciplinary. Transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinarity.
You know, and I think we also have to think not just only about interaction, we have to think about intra-action. We have to think about our relationships with things. Yeah, we are living in the post-human moment. Our relationship with the world is not about thinking about trees or thinking about water or thinking about, what can I say, earthquakes. It's thinking with them. Yeah, so this notion that somehow we're above, no, we're not, because we can see at the moment the whole world is being held captive by our own actions because we thought we were above and beyond the ecology. We have to think with, not about, yeah, because we are intra-connected. I have to think with the stones, you know, I have to think with the trees, I have to think with the land. I'm not separate from it. It's not separate from me, but it has that particular kind of colonial Cartesian separation, which I think in the post-human moment is not useful anymore. We think about new materialism. We think about, you know, the kind of the new realities that are being brought about by understanding our relationships with objects and stuff. So it's part of those assemblages that are proliferating. And, you know, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know. That's part of my work as a researcher, to think with theory, to try to understand it. Not to prove it or disprove it. We've gone beyond that. You look somewhat perplexed, Kenny.
No, I'm thinking of the when you're talking about the new way of writing, the qualitative research, and it's because I'm also into the line of qualitative research. However, in our school of thought, or my school of thought at Leicester, we haven't been, you know, I haven't been taught about that. We still fall into the same trap of writing, you know, normative.
I am a product of my own educational training. Yeah, I did my PhD at a Russell Group university in the UK, an elite institution. when I did my PhD there, you know, I encountered people like Pat Sykes, who is my supervisor. I encountered people like Wilfred Carr, who used to work with Stephen Kemmis and has done a lot of work around action research. I encountered people like John Nixon, the moral philosophers, and Dan Goodley. All these people were highly theoretical people, and all these people were at the forefront of their fields. Yeah. So the idea of what I'm saying to you now is that as a student, I was given permission. Yeah, I was given permission. I was given permission to go off and do what I wanted to do. Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was very lucky because that PhD education has set me up in my academic career. Yeah, I make no apology for being a critically queer, transformative, post-foundational researcher. That's what I am. Yeah. Now, if you don't like it, fine, you don't like it. But I don't ever feel the need to justify myself or explain myself. Nah. I'm, you know, no, I don't. No. But that's part of my biography. That's part of my situatedness, that I was very fortunate to encounter people who said, yes, you can do this. Some universities, you know, the university that I work in at the minute, I have colleagues who look at the stuff that I do and go, what the hell is it? What is he doing? And I say, well, you know, what are you doing? Your stuff is boring and dry and dead and no one reads it. I mean, I had a conversation with a colleague the other day and we got talking about ontology and epistemology. And she said to me, what are they? And I'm like, are you joking me? You've done a PhD and you don't know what ontology and epistemology is. But she'd done it in sports science and had measured things. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's looking at me going, well, what the hell does all this mean? What's a load? It's all a load of rubbish. You know, so for about an hour, we were going back and forth. But, you know, different worldviews, different paradigms.
Are you gonna write up, you know, a book, a textbook for this, like qualitative research? I mean, in order to.
No, because I don't believe in textbooks. That's the whole point. Why would I write a textbook? Why? I mean, I don't like textbooks. I've written a textbook, yeah, already. I don't like them because textbooks, people, you know, it's a bit like the Titanic. I think of the Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, you know, and the ship's going down and they're clinging on to that little bit of driftwood, you know. That's what students are like with textbooks. They cling on to these bloody textbooks as if they're the Bible. And it's like, let it go. Think for yourself. So why the last thing that I would do is write a textbook telling people how to do this stuff. Work it out for yourself. Come up with your own interpretation. Let's you know, my job as a PhD supervisor is to push people into new ways of thinking, is to provoke them, you know, and nearly all of my PhD students said, Christ, my head hurts after talking to you. And it's like, well, and so it should. Because that's your work as a doctoral student. That's your work to think. It's not my job to tell you.
So what would be your suggestions, not only for us as the researchers or, you know, supervisor, or I mean for students, I mean young researchers, in order to come up with this kind of ideas or, you know, the ways of thinking?
For students, find yourself a good supervisor. find yourself a good supervisor. That's what I would say to a student, because if you get the wrong supervisor, you're stuffed.
We have a very good question about this, and yeah, how would you be sure that your work or your work will be well received by the public then, or you couldn't care less about them? If so, then how will your work have impact?
I see. Look again, impact. It's one of those very neoliberal words. I mean, I've just written a chapter all about impact. You know, that I should really know what my H index is. I should know what my Google Scholar. I don't give a shit. I don't care. You know, I'm not interested. I don't care what my H. You know, I know that it's in the double figures, but I really don't care. Life's too short to be looking at what my H index is or what my Google Scholar is. You know, I don't care. Whether my work is well received or not, well, some people, well, it is well received because I keep getting invitations to write book chapters, and I keep getting invitations to join editorial boards, and I keep getting invitations to, you know, special guest edit journals. So, you know, if people thought my work was crap, I wouldn't be getting all these invitations. But as for impact, I don't give among fiddlers fart about impact. It's not why I do this work. I don't do this work to up my impact. I do this work because I got into this work because I believed academic life will provide me a space to make other people's lives better, to be transformative. And I'm committed to the principles of transformative social justice. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in impact and league tables and all that stuff.
Okay, another question, very interesting. Is it easier to do the creative methodology in the UK or other open-minded countries rather than some traditional countries?
Okay, again, you can do it anywhere. I work with Nuntia, yeah? Nuntia and I have written together, yeah? And some of the things that we write, I'm saying, of course we can do that. Let's do it this way. You know, it's got to be fun. Life has got to be fun. Research has got to be fun. I mean, I always, you know, when I go into classrooms with teachers, I always get really annoyed when the teachers are saying, now then, children, you know, concentrate, work, come on, do some work. No. What we should be saying is, now then, children, let's have some play. Because nobody likes to do work. Everybody likes to play. Why can't research be fun and playful and creative? Because that's what I enjoy. That's what I enjoy. I don't enjoy sat at my desk working. When I come to do a piece of writing, for me, I get really excited because it's fun. It's creative. I don't know what is going to come. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where I'm going with it. It emerges. Yeah. We should be playful and fun. And, you know, you can have fun and be playful in research in Thailand just as much as you can in the UK or you can in Australia. Find the right supervisor. Yeah. I mean, at the minute, you know, I've got 5 students all out for examination at the minute. Yeah. So they'll be off my books by the end of the year. I've got another 10 waiting to come on because I'm getting people writing to me saying, would you supervise my project? Because they've read my stuff. They've got an idea of where I'm situated. Yeah. They know that if they come to me as a supervisor, I'm not going to be telling them what they have to do. I'm going to be having a conversation with them about what they think they might want to do.
On this note, I wonder, because you have supervised so many students from both native and non-native speaking countries, like,
Yeah.
how do you find the culture of learning with these students?
Okay. With students that come mainly from Southeast Asian countries, so Cambodia, Japan, but not that Southeast Asian, Indonesia. Initially, you can see them going, ah! It's a bit of a brain fuck for them, because they've come from a system which is totally opposite to what I'm saying. And and they come in their first meeting and say, dear professor, and I say, don't call me professor, call me Mark. Professor makes me feel old and decrepit, and let's have a conversation. So they start, and I say, well, I don't agree. I think that idea is rubbish. Why do you agree in that idea? And they just sit there horrified, because they feel that they can't disagree with me. And I'm saying, disagree with me. If you think what I'm talking is rubbish, tell me, disagree with me. What's your argument? Don't sit here for the next 3 years agreeing with everything that I say, because otherwise it's not going to be fun for either of us. I like a good argument. But it is they do have to reacclimatize to the fact that if you come to do your PhD with Mark, then it's going to be a provocative experience.
You should put this in your CV on the website.
I don't need to put it in my CV. I mean, like I said, I've got 10 people queued up to start their PhDs with me next year. Would I take them on? Yeah, because they've read my stuff. They know where I'm coming from. They've probably got a very good idea of what they've signed up for.
No, because I could imagine that, for example, maybe Thai students could be having a culture shock in terms of.
Yeah. In fact, I think there is one of the people that I've agreed to supervise next year is a Thai student.
Wow.
But it's good to be shocked. It's good. It's good to be shocked. It's good to be uncomfortable. It's good to be pushed in a different direction. I mean, why do I love Thailand so much? Yeah, why does Thailand have a special place in my heart? Because when I first moved to Thailand, it was pre that dreadful SkyTrain thing. And I would wake up in the morning and I didn't have a clue what was going to greet me on the street, whether it was going to be an elephant or whether it was going to be a gaggle of lady boys, or whether it was going to be a truck full of very handsome soldiers. I didn't have a clue what was going on. Each day for me was a new adventure, and I loved it. I loved it because of that, because I didn't know, I didn't understand everything I was having to learn, everything I was having to reinterpret and make meaning and understand. You know what? And I've never felt so alive in all my life. And that's what I think research should give you. You should feel alive. I look back on my PhD and it was the best 3 years of my life. I enjoyed every single minute of it because I was brimming with ideas and possibilities and opportunities. You only get to do a PhD once, you know, you make it your own. Make it your own.
Thank you. I'm sure that all the not only PhD but master's students also learn, you know, from Mark. I think it also it also reminds me of our PhDs back in the UK, and I'm sure that all those PhD, all the lecturers here, also remind you guys to the time of those of your PhDs as well. And yeah, with your, you know, insightful wisdom and experience, I think we all agree that we have learned a lot from listening to you, and with the all these activities that allow us to gaining into deeper insights, really, into this qualitative methodology. And
it's
yeah,
post-qualitative.
Post-qualitative. Yes. And surely, if anybody would like to be in touch with Mark and learn more, can we
Yes, you can fly me over and put me up in Semet Villas on Coast Semet for at
we would
least
love you.
for at least 3 months. I could be resident there, and I could just even hide from Australia.
Oh, okay. So if there's no questions, okay. Yeah, being motivated again. Thank you. On behalf of the LINC, Language and Intercultural Communication and Research Institute for Languages and Cultures of Asia, we would like to thank Mark for everything, really, for being friends. And I mean, you know, most of all, to be our friends, really, that we have actually really cherished our friendship very much. And we all, please give a big round of applause to Mark. And we hope that everything in the world will be better soon. And we hope to see you again in Thailand.
Yeah, well, I hope to see you again in Thailand. I'm fed up of staying in Australia. I can tell you that for a start. I've had enough of it. It's not much fun. I wanna be back in Bangkok. I want to go down Soi 4. I want a gin and tonic.
By that time, we are too old for that. By that time, we are too old for that, Mark.
You're never too old, Kenny.
To go to Soi 4.
Oh God.
Okay.
Thanks very much for your patience. Thanks very much for listening to me. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you wasn't too shocked by the script.
Love it.
And good luck with your own research projects.
Thank you. We'll be in touch soon.
Okay. Take care.
I love my new title, Auntie Kenny.
Yep.
I cannot taking this role off me. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, have a good evening, Mark.
Okay. Take care.
ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ Mark.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, audience. Please help us fill in the evaluation. And then, yeah, look forward to see you guys soon. Next webinar is on September the 10th, Friday. So, yeah, see you there. Thank you. Bye-bye. Mark, I just love it.
Is that all right, Kenny?
Yeah, I find this is so new to me. I am